Hey everyone, welcome to Bytesector. Today is January 12th, 2021, and that can mean only one thing. CES is on. And this year it's special because this year it's virtual. Thanks to COVID, the CES event had to be held virtually because otherwise it would have just been reckless and irresponsible. So that gives outlets like Bytesector an opportunity to attend events that we wouldn't otherwise have been able to afford due to the costs of travel and attending the event and buying the passes and accommodations, blah, 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 blah. Needless to say, we've been enjoying CES 2021 because we've been able to attend a lot of the media briefings. So without further ado, let's dive into our day one coverage. So kicking it off, Sunday evening I get an email. Zotac has announced their latest mini PC. For those of you who don't know, Zotac is famous for their mini PCs. The Magnus One is no exception. In fact, it boasts some powerful GPU. But let's not be fooled here. While they call it a mini PC, it actually isn't mini. In fact, it sports a discrete graphics card because they haven't really invested the time to shrink down the graphics card. So it sports an RTX 3070 along with some minor improvements in the wireless department, and it still has a 10th gen Core i7 in it. But the benefit of the larger chassis is better cooling. So they've bumped it up to an 8-core i7. Anyways, moving on, Microsoft announced the Surface Pro. No, it wasn't the 8. It was the 7 Plus, in fact. Some of the benefits around the 7 Plus include LTE on the Core i5 model, which is a long-awaited feature that, for it to return. We've got a bigger battery, which means up to 15 hours of battery life. What else did we get there? Obviously, the CPU refresh for 11th gen Core processors from Intel. Better thermals as a result of some of the reorganization internally inside the chassis, and possibly the best, even mind-boggling feature, why it hasn't shown up until now. A user-replaceable SSD in the Surface Pro 7 Plus. That's right. The only problem is that the Pro 7 Plus is targeted at the enterprise and education segments, not the consumer segment. So we're going to have to wait and see and find out if we can actually buy one of those as an average consumer or not. I suspect not. Asus announced their Z590 motherboards, and I had to single them out because of this board right here. It is the ROG, and let's see if I get this right, the ROG Maximus 13 Extreme Glacial. It's got a white shroud on it, a massive EK water blocks monoblock for liquid cooling for the chipset and the CPU and the VRMs. It's got a whack ton of features. It sports DIMM.2. It's got 4 memory slots for DDR4. Obviously, being the Z590 chipset, we have Thunderbolt 4 finally. Oh my god, that took forever. And PCI Express version 4 finally makes its debut on the Intel platform. So, anyways, I will be drooling promptly all over that board as soon as I get one in my hands. Today, Asus gave us a look at a whack ton of new products. From high refresh rate monitors, to new laptops, to mice, to keyboards. It was glorious. But let's hit on the highlights. First, the ROG Flow 13. It's a 13-inch laptop. It sports modest specs. I mean, it still comes with up to, I believe, a Ryzen 9 5900HS CPU, which is still an 8-core, 16-thread CPU. And it comes with a bunch of other features, but most notably, an optional eGPU. And this is to be highlighted. You can see here over on the side. It's highlighted because it's a small ePGU. In fact, Asus says one of the smallest on the market. And the benefit of this specific eGPU and combined with the ROG Flow 13 is that it acts as a port replicator. So you've got your LAN port, your extra display ports, extra USB ports all on this. And you can have up to an RTX 3080. Think about that. The portability of a 13-inch laptop with the gaming performance from an RTX 3080. Mind-boggling. Anyways, moving on, we've got the ROG Strix Scar 15 and 17-inch variants. The big thing about these is the 17-inch Strix Scar comes with a 360 Hz refresh rate on its display panel. It's still a laptop. Please keep that in mind. So, for you gamers on the go who need precision, who need high refresh rate, who need the best of the best mobile CPUs and mobile GPUs, this might be what you need. Anyways, what else did they give us? They gave us a refresh on the Strix G15, G17. Some interesting colors here in the chassis. Nothing big around those. We got the new Zephyrus 15 SE, and it looks amazing. Obviously went through some refresh, some refinement. It looks great, as it always did. Now, one of the defining features across the entire 2021 laptop range from Asus is they all come with up to a Ryzen 9 5900HX CPU, which boasts between a base clock speed of 3.3 gigahertz and a boost of 4.8 gigahertz, and obviously the 8 cores, 16 threads. And they all come with RTX 30 series graphics cards, from a 3060 to a 3080, depending on the model and the specs. Absolutely mind-blowing. Oh, and did I forget? Not one of them comes with a display panel with less than a 60 Hz refresh rate, and a majority of the panels on all of these models range from 120 Hz to 360 Hz, and everything in between. Nvidia came out today and they announced nothing interesting really. All we got was an RTX 3060. Definitely not what I was expecting. That silence was on purpose. So, as you'll recall, the 3060 Ti came out earlier in the cycle. It sports 8 gigs of GDDR6 memory on a 256-bit memory bus. The base 3060, they've trimmed down the memory bus to 192 bits, probably just to hold back on the memory bandwidth a bit for performance reasons, but they've boosted the memory from 8 gigs on the Ti to 12 gigs on the base model. 12 gigs GDDR6. I mean, I'm sure the Ti model still outperforms, but this could be the best mining card for all you cryptocurrency enthusiasts out there, given how much memory it has. And with an MSRP of $329 US, it certainly hits a good price point. Mining performance aside, it's going to be a great graphics card. I can't wait. Target release date is late February 2021. And of course, you can expect all of the board partners to be launching their own variants of the 3060 along with that, as they were announced today as well. Western Digital popped up on my radar. I mean, Seagate certainly hasn't, but Western Digital did, because they announced a bit of an upgrade to their existing lineup. So they've announced 4 terabyte models to their existing portable SSD lineups across the board. This includes the WD Black P50 game drive, getting an upgrade to a 4 terabyte model. The Western Digital WD My Passport gets an upgrade to a 4 terabyte model. The SanDisk Extreme and Extreme Pro both get 4 terabyte variants as well. The P50 game drive and the Extreme Pro from SanDisk Both sport 2000 megabytes a second read and write speeds over USB 3.2 Gen 2 times 2. Amazing. I mean, that's amazing performance for an internal SSD. Not so much on the M.2 PCI Express, but it certainly blows away all of those SATA SSDs. As an external drive. Crazy. Razer announced a brand new Blade 15 and Blade 17 Pro. You know what? I can't do it. I just can't do it. I'm sorry, Razer, but you've just refreshed these models. They're 2020 models with 11th gen Intel CPUs and 30 series, RTX 30 series graphics cards from Nvidia, and that's it. You didn't innovate. There's no inspiration in the 2021 model lineup. Really, I'm very disappointed. So we're going to move on right now. AMD spent the better part of their presentation talking about the impact they've had on the computing and gaming industries over the last 12 months. I mean, we've seen Ryzen in Zen 3. We've seen RDNA 2 with the RX 6000 graphics cards. We've seen AMD provide both compute and graphics to the next gen, I'm not going to call them next gen, current gen consoles in the PlayStation 5 and the Xbox Series X. They've been all over the board. They've been knocking down Nvidia. They've been knocking down Intel. And frankly, they have a lot to boast about. So I don't blame them for using some of the time to talk about that. But two things were key among their announcements. The first, they talked about Epic, specifically Epic codename Milan. So not the ones that are out, but the ones that are coming out. Certainly they provided a peek at the performance that we can expect from Epic, and it appears on the surface to decimate the Intel Xeon platform. But let's keep in mind that their comparison was with a 28-core Xeon Gold chip, not a Platinum chip, versus a 32-core AMD Epic. Again, until one performs the independent benchmarks, who's to say how tailored these results are? But given AMD's history and reputation in 2020, I would say that their Epic platform is going to do some damage again. But the really interesting announcement out of AMD was the announcement of their mobile Zen 3 Ryzen 5000 chips. And I'm so excited to see what these chips can do, how they stack up against the 11th gen Intel mobile CPUs, and really how they stack up against themselves as desktop CPUs, right? So, again, in the mobile space, it ranges from a Ryzen 3 to a Ryzen 9. At the top end, the Ryzen 9 5980HX will give you 8 cores, 16 threads, 3.3 gigahertz, boosting to 4.8 gigahertz at a 45 watt TDP. Absolutely insane for a mobile chip. I mean, you can still buy desktop CPUs that aren't that powerful. Thermaltake didn't want to be left out of the festivities. They are announcing over 30 products at CES 2021 this week. And they kicked it off yesterday with an interesting presentation. The highlight for me among that presentation was the finally, we're seeing the Tower 100 come to market. It's a mini ITX chassis, but the introduction of the new Divider series. There's the Divider 200, 300, and 500 series, which covers everything between micro ATX all the way up to a full tower chassis with ample room to provide liquid cooling and a whole bunch of other things. You can see here, this is the Divider 300. The Divider name comes from the side panel being divided between, in the 300, a piece of metal and a piece of tempered glass. And in the 500, you can actually have both pieces be tempered glass or have the metal glass combination as well for additional cooling and airflow. Either way, we're tuning in daily to see what other really cool things Thermaltake brings to market and announces at CES, but certainly not somebody to ignore. And lastly, I just wanted to touch on this and say everybody across the board, MSI, Gigabyte, they're all announcing their Z590 motherboards. Just because I didn't highlight them here doesn't mean that they haven't been announced. They are out in a public space. The press releases have been issued. It is CES, the Consumer Electronics Show, and I've been talking a whole lot about hardware. And I have to say, there have been consumer electronics announcements. They really haven't popped out and wowed me. Certainly the hardware community has been pushing their message a lot harder. But there have been some notable exceptions. So we're going to quickly touch on them. Samsung had a huge event yesterday. They talked about things like micro LED, where you're going to literally have billions, millions, billion, I can't remember. I think it's millions actually. Millions of LED, micro LEDs lighting up your panel, giving a whole new definition to zone lighting. Because, you know, remember when you had 16 discrete zones that lit up your LED or LCD panel on your TV? And that was just a year or two ago. Now imagine 24 million zones. That's right. I know every year they say blacker blacks and more vibrant colors and blah, 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 blah. Well, micro LED promises just that. But Samsung didn't stop with micro LED. They introduced Neo QLED. And you might be saying, QLED from the Matrix? No. It takes that whole QLED concept and shrinks down the LED components into something they're calling mini LEDs, which are just, I guess, groups of micro LEDs that light up the back panel and in bigger chunks though. Again, blacker blacks, but not as black as what you'd get from a true micro LED panel. One of the coolest things out of Samsung though was a solar powered remote for your media and entertainment. So your TV, your soundbar, whatever, it's solar powered. What I found most interesting is it can be charged with both indoor and outdoor lighting. Does that mean that my LED or incandescent bulbs will charge it? I don't know, but it sounds interesting. You can also obviously charge it with a USB cable if sunlight is, if you're looking for sunlight that cannot be found. But certainly that's part of their sustainability effort, and I commend them. Definitely one of the more interesting, innovative things that I've seen at CES this year. Moving on to Sony. Sony's not to be forgotten. They've got new technologies, new TV models. They've pushed their sustainability efforts. That's one of the topics that all consumer electronics brands are pushing at CES 2021. So, touching on the TV department, we see Bravia XR, which is kind of interesting because it builds in the ability to detect cognitive characteristics of its viewers. So let's say you're watching TV. The TV can actually monitor the angle that you're watching from, the distance from the TV you are, whether your eyes are looking a bit up or down, depending on the level of the TV versus the seating arrangement. And it can actually adjust the picture to be optimal for your position to the TV. Incredible. Similarly, I would expect this technology to find its way into their audio in terms of soundbars and home theater receivers. Not quite sure how that would work yet, but to basically optimize the audio experience as well. We saw Airpeek, something that people are talking about, make its debut and finally reach the public eye. And what it is at its most simplest form, it's a quadcopter drone carrying a camera. It's targeted for cinematography, not average or drone users. It's really for cinematography. It looks interesting. We'll find out more about it in the future. There's a mini site dedicated to the Airpeek, so we'll see where that goes. And additional things that came to my attention. One of the really cool things was around audio. It's called 360 Reality Audio from Sony. Basically, the concept of surrounding yourself with the sound. It all comes back to how the sound is recorded, how it's processed. You can actually, once the recording is properly done, choose where you want the listener to be in that soundscape before you master the audio. and that's kind of cool. But certainly, those were the highlights so far from day 1 and day 0 of CES 2021. Thank you guys for tuning in, for watching, for coming to Bytesector for your CES information. We will be back tomorrow with day 2 coverage. Super stoked. Thank you very much for tuning in. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel so that you get alerts for future content, both CES and our review and episodic content. Come to us on Twitter. Visit Bytesector.com for the latest in CES news, reviews, general news, and everything else. We will see you all tomorrow. Thanks for tuning in. Bye.